Now, as bushfires continue to burn across Australia, forcing many to evacuate, ravaging everything from homes to wildlife, the government is also coming under fire, while civilians are the ones raising millions and millions of dollars. Ben Levine has more.
A devastating disaster for man, wildlife, and nature. New numbers of animals perished in Australian bushfires reveal the scale of the tragedy. The WWF estimates 1 billion animals would have died in the wildfires that rage across the country, and those who make it through the flames could die in the coming weeks. While the fires have eased south of Sydney in New South Wales, the dangerous conditions that have engulfed much of Queensland, Victoria, and South Australia in flames continue to burn out of control, forcing thousands to flee and causing incalculable damage to property and wildlife. Since they began in September, the fires have taken almost 2,000 homes, and as of today, 24 lives.
If you ever were in the field to see what we go through, you got no idea, man. Government's got no idea, and you just got to start caring about the country, sending money overseas, millions and billions of dollars to countries, while our poor farmers are just starving and committing suicide.
In response to heavy criticism of the Australian government's perceived distracted approach to the bushfire incident, Prime Minister Scott Morrison announced the largest military call-up in living memory. For the first time in Australia's history, over 3,000 Army, Navy, and Air Force reservists will mobilize and battle against the ever-raging fires.
Sure, there's been a lot of commentary. There's been plenty of criticism. I've had the benefit of a lot of analysis on a lot of issues. But I can't be distracted by that. And the public, I know, are not distracted by that. What they need us to focus on, all of us, actually, all of us, focusing on the needs there in the communities and getting the support where it needs to go.
Prime Minister Morrison also announced the immediate commencement of the National Bushfire Recovery Agency, which will work in conjunction with state and defence authorities to provide necessary assistance to those displaced by the fires.
My answer to Australians is yes, you can be confident that the government, the state government, the local governments, all agencies are putting everything they have into this and will continue to do to support their safety, to protect their homes, to protect their property, and then to rebuild both their lives and their communities and their homes and their businesses.
Warships and combat helicopters have already been repurposed to help with the largest maritime evacuation in Australia since World War II. Over 4,000 evacuees stranded on Malakuta beaches since New Year's Eve have been moved to safety in Melbourne. But the bushfires, which experts say have been caused by severe climate change and over 3 years of drought, are generating so much heat they are creating their own weather systems, including dry lightning storms and fire tornadoes. Authorities say these unpredictable changes in fire behavior can cause lightning strikes, which could ignite new wildfires, making the bushfires that much harder to fight.